U.S. President Trump's threats to annex Greenland are straining transatlantic ties. Today, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance told Europeans to take Trump seriously in his push to acquire the Danish territory. European leaders are trying to play down any possibility of U.S. military action. At the same time, they're trying to avert a crisis within NATO. DW's Terry Schultz has more.
Last January, President Donald Trump sent his son to Greenland, hoping to buy the semi-autonomous Danish territory. This year, Trump's threatening to send planes of soldiers to take it by force. He says that would increase Arctic security.
It's so strategic.
Trump's Greenland gambit has instead done the opposite, suggesting the previously unthinkable, that NATO's most powerful member would invade a smaller one in a fight over alliance territory.
It is a huge victory for Putin that we're even having this discussion.
NATO is prepared to deal with attacks from the outside, not the inside.
NATO as an alliance is, it's obviously military strong, but militarily strong, but it is politically vulnerable, and we're just seeing how politically vulnerable it is at the moment.
When a country feels threatened, it has the right to convene emergency consultations at NATO under what's called Article 4. But with the U.S. as the source of Denmark's insecurity, sources say Copenhagen will be heavily pressured not to do this. Likewise, the idea that European allies could send forces to protect Greenland against attack is too far-fetched for a NATO conversation.
We don't think that we are going to see President Macron sending troops to Greenland, or Chancellor Merz, or Prime Minister Stammer, or any other European NATO ally. This is something that has to be resolved between the Kingdom of Denmark and the U.S. administration.
And if it isn't resolved, Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen says NATO is dead. Danish European parliamentarian Per Clausen says that would at least be true for Denmark.
How should you could be member of an alliance which has to defend you if the most powerful in this alliance is attacking you?
Secretary General Mark Rutte has yet to comment publicly on the renewed tensions. When the 32 NATO ambassadors met Thursday, Greenland was discussed, but only in the sense of how to collectively improve Arctic security. No one mentioned how counterproductive to that a U.S. military intervention would be.
Well, DW correspondent Terry Schultz, she filed that report. She joins me now from Brussels. Terry, we heard you say there that despite all of these rising tensions, the head of NATO, Mark Rutte, he has not weighed in. I mean, this seems like a strange silence, is it?
Well, to be fair, Mark Rutte has not yet had a public appearance, and to my knowledge, he certainly hasn't canceled anything to avoid having to comment on this. But yeah, we are used to hearing him actually defend the Trump administration's criticism of the alliance and say that, it has forced allies to make changes that actually makes NATO stronger. Perhaps he doesn't have any good lines on that this time, but he does have his first public press conference on Monday in Croatia, so I'm hoping some Croatian journalists ask him about this so we can hear what he's going to say about that. Now, one person, Brent, who hasn't managed to completely avoid having to comment on it is the Supreme Allied Commander, Alexis Grinkowicz, who is a U.S. general. He was in Helsinki today and was asked about it, and he said that, this has not affected his daily job at all at a military level, and he repeated the standard line that NATO remains ready to defend every inch of its territory. Of course, that doesn't answer the question at all of what you would do if one ally attacked another to get more of that territory. But I wasn't there to ask a desperate follow-up, Brent, so that's all we know for now.
Well, let's go a little bit deeper in what you've said here. I mean, what options does NATO really have here?
It doesn't really have a lot of options. Denmark could bring it up at NATO. But again, yesterday, there was this opportunity with all 32 allies having their first meeting of the new year. And what I was told is that Denmark raised Arctic security. So itself not wanting to really bring those tensions into the open. And it talked about what allies could do to help improve security. But I have a feeling, Brent, that that's how this is going to be referred to in the future. We know that Mark Rutte spoke with Marco Rubio today, and in the two-sentence readout, they said they talked about Arctic security.
Yeah, talk about a frustrating Friday. As if this weren't enough, President Trump, he's doubling down today on his desire to actually own Greenland. He said in a New York Times interview that simply working with Denmark within existing arrangements is not enough. So how do you think that's going to go over?
I think that if Denmark thought that boosting, and the other allies too, thought that boosting Arctic security were going to be enough, this is new cause for worry. That he said, nah, really, we need to own it. That's what I consider success. And further, when asked whether he would choose between trying to acquire Greenland or keeping NATO together, he said, I don't really have an answer to that, and I might have to make a choice. So I think that these are further unsettling remarks. If NATO thought that simply boosting Arctic security, as President Trump said was his aim in the beginning, were going to be enough, this is a new sign that that is not really his end goal, Brett.
Yeah, we'll have to see what happens next week when Mark Rutte does have a chance to answer more questions, see if he can soothe any nerves here in Europe. We will see. DW Brussels correspondent Terry Schultz with the latest tonight. Terry, as always, thank you.